Hey, good morning. How are you? Thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning as we get started for a Tuesday breakfast with Jesus. And you, I am very grateful for having your company here with me this morning, and hope you're doing well. Yes, we are slowly winding our way out of this winter. Yeah, we've got officially just almost a month left in the actual season of winter, but mm, it can't end soon enough as far as I'm concerned. It's like, come on, springtime, come on, summer. But we'll get there. We'll get there. All right, let me say good morning to my breakfast club. I got to try to get myself situated here, and there's the feed. Alrighty. Okay, awesome. I see we've got a few of you here with us already. We got Donna and Andito, Michael, and I'm not sure who else. I see that that's good. So I hope you're doing well. We're going to continue our journey this morning looking at the justice of God and what that actually is all about, with a view toward us, really learning how we're going to participate with Him in establishing His justice here on the earth. So, yesterday, we looked at the definition of justice according to at least the Old Covenant scriptures, which I think are good because those Hebrew words, were really the foundation of justice with respect to God's dealings with His people, Israel, and also the earth at large. So the words that we looked at basically have the same definition. One of them, or they both really mean to determine what is right. And it could either be according to God's law, which we would, define today as the will of the Lord, right? What's His will? What does He want, right? Or also what is right, as what ought to be, what ought to be so, right? Powerful concepts. So yesterday we also started to look at the prophecies of Jesus, of the Messiah, and the three passages that for me really speak the most powerfully concerning the coming of Jesus and how He was going to be involved in establishing justice. We looked at one yesterday, which was the prophecy of the birth of, for unto us a child is born. And it talks about the government of God, the justice of the Lord resting on His shoulders. Today I want to look with you at Isaiah 42 and verses 1 through 4. And this is really my favorite prophecy of Jesus as the Messiah who came to establish the justice of God. And we'll look more deeply into this one as we kind of move forward, into the application of justice. For now, I just want to kind of give you again that sense of how important justice really is in the heart of the Father. So he's speaking about Jesus here. He says, "Behold my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He will bring forth justice to the nations. He will not cry out or raise his voice, nor make his voice heard in the street. A bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick He will not extinguish. He will faithfully bring forth justice. He will not be disheartened or crushed until He has established justice in the earth, and the coastlands will wait expectantly for His law." So this amazing prophecy that's here in Isaiah 42, we see that there are three times here. The word justice is repeated 3 times, associated with the ministry and the purpose of Jesus coming here to the earth. Now that's huge. That I don't know how much more emphasis that the Lord could put on this idea that there is justice, and I want justice to be done to such an extent that he has made that, and he made it a core, a core value, a core part of the ministry of Jesus, right? That Jesus came here to this earth to actually establish the justice of God. So we just need to accept that and understand that, because that's what God has said, right? This is how important it is. It's so important that Jesus is going to be the one who actually establishes justice on the earth. Well, all right, let's find out more about what that looks like. So another passage that speaks about this is in Jeremiah. This is chapter 33, verses 14 and 15, where he, delivering the word of the Lord, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will fulfill the good word which I've spoken concerning the house of Israel and the house of Judah. In those days and at that time, I will cause a righteous branch of David to spring forth, and he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth." Oh, I mean, it just, when I read that, I just feel the weight of what Jesus was sent to do. That righteous branch of David, that's describing Jesus as being of the lineage of David, right? And that he shall, no doubt about it, he shall execute justice and righteousness on the earth. So, I mean, we've got such clear foundational truth regarding the fact that there is a justice of God, and Jesus, in what he came to do, was, he was the reason. If he hadn't come, okay, that's what we need to understand. If Jesus had not come and done what he did, in terms of demonstrating the Father's heart, teaching us what life looks like when you live in relationship with the Father, and of course, most importantly, going to that cross to be crucified and shedding his blood for all time, once and for all, dealing with the penalty and the consequences of sin for the human race. Whew. So, I mean, this stuff is so amazing. It's so powerful. So, for me, that kind of caused me to ask the question, well, okay, so what needed to happen in order for this justice to be served, right? You're saying, Lord, that Jesus came to execute justice, to make sure justice was done here in the earth. So where was the injustice, right? I mean, that's important for us to understand. Where was the injustice that Jesus came to correct, right? To overturn. It's almost like you're in this court scene where there's been an injustice done, and it needs now to be corrected so that the right verdict can be issued, okay? And that's really, in effect, what we're talking about here. So in order to understand, why this was necessary, we have to go back to the beginning. We have to go back to Genesis and understand one aspect of that story that I'm going to say, I don't know that I've heard a lot of people talk about this. And I don't say that, to blow myself up, because maybe there are and I just don't know, but I've not heard a lot about this. And when God first awakened me, to this. I'm going to say it's probably been like 15 years ago. It just blew my mind. Now, back then, I wasn't really aware of what the implications of it were for, our role as an ecclesia here on the earth. But that's a good point that we need justice today from COVID-19. And absolutely, that's something that the Lord is wanting us to understand. But if we go back to the Genesis account and see, it's a familiar story to most of us. We see that God made us in his image, right? He gave us the authority to rule over the fish of the sea, birds of the sky, cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, right? So we were created in the image of God, male and female. But it says here in verse 28, this is Genesis 1:28, God blessed them. He blessed Adam and Eve. And that blessing, the way it's written, the way it's there in the Hebrew, this wasn't just kind of a one-time thing. It's written in such a way that God's blessing on Adam and Eve was ongoing. It was very intentional. In many ways, you can compare what he said here to the grace of God, that empowering presence of God in our lives. And so he did that. He blessed them, again saying, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, rule over the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. No humans, all right? There's no rulership over humans here. It's all about, the animals. So that's the scenario. That's the environment into which the human race was created and placed. And then, of course, we have the next scene in Genesis 3 where the serpent comes in and starts to talk to Eve. Isn't it interesting that he spoke to Eve first and not to Adam? I think it's because he realized that Eve had never really heard God's voice with respect to that particular tree of the knowledge of good and evil. She had never heard the actual voice of God saying, don't eat that fruit, okay? All she had learned was through Adam concerning that tree. So the serpent comes, questions what God actually said, and again, because Eve hadn't heard directly from God, she had only heard it through Adam, and this is this is my understanding of this. You're free to disagree, but I don't see that, because if you look at the account of it, God spoke to Adam about the tree before he made Eve, all right? And we don't have any, indication in the scriptures that God spoke that to Eve. And I believe this is very important. Yeah, just stay with me for a minute, right? So he questions, did God really say you can't eat from any tree of this garden? So she says, well, we can eat of all the trees of the garden, but from that tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die. Now, he never said anything about touching it. God didn't say anything. So I can well imagine Adam saying to her, now look, you see that tree there? God said that we shouldn't eat of that tree. Don't even touch it, because if you do, you're going to die. Now, I don't even know if she understood what die meant, but she got the warning. But Adam, I think he embellished a little bit when he said, don't even touch it. So she repeats that to the serpent, and we know what happens. The serpent challenges that, saying, oh, that's not true. God's holding out on you. He doesn't want you to have something that he has, never mind that they're living in this perfect environment where there's nothing lacking, right? They actually are walking with the Lord every day in the cool of the day, just enjoying this time with him. And I mean, it's an amazing thing. Yet the enemy was successful in convincing her that, God's not telling you everything. Okay? He was able to deceive Eve on that basis. Now, Adam, we know, probably, it seems like he was within earshot of all of this. And when she took the fruit and ate, he realized, I got a choice to make. And he just simply made, a cold, hard decision. I'm sticking with her. Okay, maybe it is true. I don't know, but I'm sticking with her. And he ate as well. So I want you to think about this with me for a moment. When the Lord came down to confront them with this, right? They were afraid. They hid themselves because they had their eyes had opened and they realized, oh my gosh, we're naked. Well, who told you that, right? Who told you were naked? They just became self-aware in a way that never was there previously. There was no self-awareness to that extent. It was just simply, we're here to enjoy what God's created. We're here for one another, but they didn't have that kind of self-awareness, right? So here's the outcome of this conversation with the Lord, right? First of all, Adam blames Eve. The woman you gave to be with me, she gave me from this tree and I ate. Well, duh. That's just you being stupid, Adam. You didn't have to take the the fruit from her. You could have just said, you know what? Yeah, no. But he didn't do that. So the Lord turns to Eve and says, well, what is this you have done? And the woman said, the serpent deceived me and I ate. Wow. Now, I'm not responding or reacting to that, out of anger or even disappointment. Because as we think about the justice of God, I want you to consider the fact that when God created Adam and Eve as the progenitors of the human race and placed them in that garden, what was his original intent? He wanted a relationship with them and, by extension, the human race. That was why we were created. This wasn't just some kind of a, whim on the part of the Trinity. Oh, it's getting a little boring. Let's create this, this race of beings. No, this was an intentional act on the part of the triune God because they wanted to have a relationship with a sentient being, which would be you and I, who actually had a choice as to whether we would have a relationship with him. Because without that, the love is just not the same. All the angels and whatever beings there are in heaven, they see the glory of the Lord all the time. So, their relationship with him is different than what we have. We have to choose. And, I use the analogy often of the difference between a pet, a dog or cat that we have, that we really develop a connection with, an affection for, and the animal reciprocates, but it's not the same because they're responding out of instinct. It's just not the same as when another human makes a free will choice to love us. And that, if you wrap your mind around that, you'll understand why God created the human race, because he wanted that. Okay. So here he has, established all of this here on the earth for that purpose. And the enemy, of course, who by this time had been kicked out of heaven with whatever the number of angels were that got deceived and went with him. So Satan concocts this plan to absolutely destroy what God had wanted all along. Now, we know that the Lord had already foreseen this, right? The lamb slain before the foundation of the world. They already knew that this was going to happen, yet he did it anyway. But what I want you to see today is the deception of Eve was a gross injustice against the human race. The enemy took advantage of the naivete of this woman who heretofore had basically just, kind of lived in a place of acceptance of all good things. It was all good, And the enemy comes in to raise a question, to cause doubt and uncertainty in her heart concerning whether or not God is always good. And so through his lies and his deception, the way he impugned the character of our God, folks, that's injustice, okay? That is perpetrating an injustice that ended up causing that separation between the human race and God that could only be overcome and fixed by Jesus paying the penalty, okay? So here in this account, we see the very first example of injustice. And so because of that, right, the consequences that played out on the human race, God goes and basically lists the consequences that are now going to happen as a result of, and I'm going to say as a result of Adam making the choice to eat the fruit knowing full well, okay, he was not deceived. And so that's important to understand. Adam was not the deceived one. Eve was. He just decided, I'm going to stick with her. Okay. So what were the consequences? Well, the serpent was cursed. But who cares about that, right? The enmity between the serpent and the woman, between your seed and her seed, that's talking about Jesus, right? That the devil is going to continue to fight against God's Messiah, his chosen one that's going to fix the problem. He shall bruise you on the head, you shall bruise him on the heel. In other words, that what the devil did was a minor thing compared to what Jesus did, crushing the head of the serpent. The woman, pain in childbirth, bringing forth children in pain, being connected to her husband, in a way of being more dependent than I think God originally intended for women to be. Now I think the Lord has helped women to overcome that. And there's no, those of us that walk in the truth, that there is no distinction between man and women, men and women in terms of God's kingdom and how he sees us. That's been done away with, because it says here, he will rule over you. And I know that that's been a major issue. But again, these are the consequences that God is saying, that folks realize that all of these consequences were never in the heart of the Father for the human race. Okay, this was never what he wanted for us. Right? Adam, he is also going to be dealt with. It says the ground is now cursed. It's not going to bear fruit and vegetables and everything for you easily. You're going to have to work your butt off and sweat and all of that. Thorns and thistles are going to compete with your crops. um, by the sweat of your face. In other words, instead of a life of just simply enjoying life as they had in the garden, now you're going to have to work for whatever it is that you need, and that he says this is all going to be in place till you return to the ground, because you are dust, and that's what you were made of, and so to dust you shall return. So they were, basically kicked out of the garden, to live now on their own. God still related to them on some level. If you look through the book of Genesis, you can see God speaking to them and to their children and to Abraham and all Noah. All these folks actually heard from the Lord, but there was this sin separation, that occurred, and death came into the human race. So all of this is basically to say that what happened to the human race was ultimately an injustice because of how it happened. It happened through deception, through the enemy lying to Eve, and God saw that and said, that's never what I'd wanted. I never wanted that. So what we're discovering, what we're going to learn about as we go further into this, that the justice that Jesus accomplished through his crucifixion, his death, his resurrection, that Jesus, he absolutely reestablished the justice of God on the earth, which is to say that everything that happened because of the fall that God never wanted for the human race, well, see, that has now been reversed on many, many levels. Hasn't been completely reversed because we're still subject to the curse of death. Our human bodies do not last forever, right? But in terms of the consequences that came upon the human race because of the enemy's deception, his lies, and his success in shifting the allegiance of Eve away from the Father and toward the enemy, that injustice has absolutely been overruled by the justice of God. And so we're going to look more deeply as we shift into, I got a few more Old Covenant verses that I want to share with you, but then we're going to shift into this New Covenant where we get to understand, so the justice of God was carried out upon his Son because of sin, because Jesus became sin, and we were united with him in his death and in his resurrection. So the justice of God, which is the wages of sin is death, right? That's been handled. That's been carried out. His justice was done to pay the penalty, right, for the sin of the human race. And so now we get to explore what God's justice looks like on the other side of that verdict. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful to give you the bigger picture concerning why all this talk of justice. Why, did God prophesy concerning the coming of Jesus and filled those prophecies with justice? Well, that's why. Because what happened was an injustice. Yes, Adam made a cold-hearted decision, to stay with Eve, but she was utterly and completely deceived by the enemy. And God said, okay, I already have a plan. Whatever is going to happen here, and he listed all those consequences, I'm going to make it right. Okay, that's what justice is all about, determining what is right according to what the heart and the will of the Lord is, determining what ought to be so. All right, and so that's what we're going to explore as we move forward together in all of this. So, powerful stuff, folks. All right, let me quickly say good morning to the rest of my breakfast club. I've kind of gone over time, but I think I started a few minutes late this morning. Um, let's see, Ralph and Rosa, aloha, Kathy. And my goodness, I don't see too many of my usuals with us this morning. I hope everybody's doing all right. Danielle, did the animals talk? That's a great question. I think so. It appears that there was the ability to communicate with the animals. So Eve didn't seem to be too surprised about a talking serpent, did she? um, so yeah, there we go. I think who else have we got here? Maria, good morning. So thank you all, guys. Thank you again, all, for being here with me. I appreciate that so very much, and I do appreciate your sharing of this video with your friends. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 7:30 Eastern, as we have a little more breakfast with Jesus. All right, thanks so much.